The Roman Empire, a name whispered in awe, spoken with respect, and met with fear. From the sun-baked sands of Africa to the mist-shrouded isles of Britannia, the Roman eagle cast its long shadow. It was an empire at its zenith, a beacon of civilization and power. Yet, even in this golden age, cracks were beginning to show. The empire, vast and sprawling, was not immune to the seeds of discontent. In the distant eastern provinces, a storm was brewing, one that threatened to shake the very foundations of Rome. The year was 80 AD. The Emperor Nero, infamous for his excesses and tyranny, sat upon the throne. His rule, though seemingly absolute, was plagued by whispers of rebellion. Nowhere was this unrest more evident than in the eastern provinces, long neglected by the distant heart of the empire. Here, amongst the fertile valleys and ancient cities, the embers of revolt were fanned into a raging inferno. The whispers turned to shouts, the pleas for justice into cries for freedom. Rome, once seen as a beacon of order, was now perceived as an oppressive force. The seeds of rebellion sown in the fertile ground of discontent had taken root. Gaius Maximus was a soldier's soldier. He was a young man, barely a man, but with the bearing of a seasoned veteran. He had the lean, hard look of the camp about him, the keen eyes that missed nothing, and a jaw that spoke of a will of iron. His loyalty to Rome was unquestioning, his dedication to the legion absolute. Gaius had risen quickly through the ranks, his sword arm as strong as his strategic mind. He was a natural leader, inspiring his men with a quiet courage that spoke louder than any battle cry. When Rome called, Gaius answered, his loyalty as unwavering as the steel of his gladius. His latest orders, however, filled him with a sense of unease. He was to travel to the eastern provinces, to a land teetering on the brink of open rebellion. His mission, to crush the uprising and remind the rebels of the iron fist of Rome. It was a task he would undertake with his usual efficiency, but for the first time in his career, doubt gnawed at the edges of his mind. There were whispers in the legions, whispers of the unrest in the east, whispers of the rebels' cause, whispers that spoke of Roman corruption and the plight of the oppressed, whispers that Gaius, despite himself, found impossible to ignore. The eastern provinces, once jewels in the Roman crown, were now shadows of their former glory. Years of neglect and the iron fist of Roman taxation had taken their toll. The once grand cities were crumbling, their streets filled with beggars and the dispossessed. The fertile fields lay fallow, the peasants groaning under the burden of unfair taxes and the brutality of Roman tax collectors. The whispers of rebellion, carried on the wind, spoke of a different kind of Rome. A Rome where justice was a distant memory, and the cries of its people were met with indifference. The people of the East, their spirits unbroken, yearned for the day they could cast off the shackles of Roman rule. Into this volatile mix came Gaius Maximus, the young general tasked with quelling the unrest. His legions marched east, their sandals kicking up dust as they went, each step taking them closer to the heart of the rebellion. Gaius, riding at the head of his men, felt a growing sense of foreboding. The land itself seemed to whisper of discontent. The wind carried the scent of smoke and the distant clang of metal on metal. Even the sun, beating down from a cloudless sky, seemed to reflect the simmering tension that gripped the land. Gaius, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword, knew that he was riding into a storm. Varus. The name was on everyone's lips, whispered in hushed tones in the marketplaces and roared in defiance from the mountains. A blacksmith by trade, Varus was a man of the people, a charismatic leader who had risen from their ranks. He spoke of freedom and justice, of a land free from Roman oppression, his words resonating with the downtrodden masses. Their first encounter was not on the battlefield, but in a secluded grove, the air thick with the scent of pine and the murmur of a hidden waterfall. Varus, unarmed and bearing a simple olive branch, stood before Gaius. His eyes, though filled with the fires of rebellion, held a depth of sadness that surprised the young general. He spoke not of conquest or glory, but of the plight of his people, of the injustice and suffering they endured under Roman rule. Gaius listened, his face an impassive mask, but his mind racing. He had expected a barbarian, a brute driven by greed or lust for power. Instead, he found a man of conviction, a leader fighting for a cause he believed in, a cause that resonated with a deep-seated sense of fairness that Gaius, despite himself, found hard to deny.